Two vascular surgeons walk into a bar and come out with a podcast. We are talking everything vascular and not. Welcome to the Life of Flow podcast.
The following podcast is not relating to my teachings and work at Del Cedar Medical Center and is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome to the Life of Flow podcast, another episode of Vascular and Not. And today I really have the honor of introducing a great guest, a great friend, a great mentor, somebody that's really out there in so many ways. And I mean it as a MacGyver, as a trailblazer, just a stud of a guy overall. And I'm talking about John Rundback. John is right now the managing partner of Advanced Interventional and Vascular Specialists at the Advanced Interventional and Vascular Specialists Clinic. And I, just have a lot of fun. Every time you talk to John, he's just full of stories, full of great sayings, and just very inspirational. His career has been amazing. I think I met him first at the screens of Link as he was doing live cases. And he's going to tell us a little bit of where his mind is at, where his professional life is taking him, and a little bit of this new kind of venture into the entrepreneur world as he's really heading a few startup companies now. So I really enjoyed it. We had a little bit of an issue with John's camera, but it actually led into a pretty cool conversation because this is the first time that we actually just listened to each other. And so I think allowed for a pretty in-depth conversation. But if you're a fan of John and you're looking to see John, you may not get the video because we couldn't get that to work. But hopefully you'll love the conversation as much as we did, and you can tune in till the end of this show. Thank you very much.
Vamos.
Man, it's been a while that I've been trying to get this young man to the show. We have been chasing each other, but as is usual, with three very busy schedules, it's always so hard. But I'm so happy that we finally nailed this down. And John, I know it's a Saturday morning for you, and we apologize for stealing a little bit of time, but I hope that you'll enjoy it as much as I know we will, and as much as the people that listen to us will too. So welcome, man.
Welcome.
Thanks, Miguel. Yeah, it's exciting to be a part of the Life of Flow podcast. Obviously, I'm a huge admirer of this and everything you've done. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, we always, we go back as to why we thought there was a need, and it was this intentional project of trying to just have a very relaxed conversation, kick your shoes off, have a glass of wine or a nice cup of coffee in the morning, and have a conversation with people you like. And then we thought that there was a good reason to, I guess, democratize that in a way and have other people maybe listen into some of the conversations. That, who knows? I mean, maybe nobody cares, but
Some people care.
I think people do like the format. It's a little bit different. It's not rigid. It's not just science. It's more about life.
There's very little science here.
Actually, science is the least probably
Science
thing
light
that we've brought to the show.
That's so important. I watch a lot of these podcasts. I watch a lot of yours, especially for people who are sort of developing their careers, kind of young and mid-career. They get so focused on the procedural aspects of things that they get very little time to sort of step back and see what their life trajectory might be. And you're really filling that void.
Yeah. So, John, man, I go back and I try to remember when we met, and I probably think it was a good 15 years, if not more. It was back in the Leipzig early 2000s or mid 2000 days. You've always been, you were always a star on the screen with some pretty amazing procedures, always on top of things, involved very strongly. Then, with Viva, you've pushed, you've recruited on all major studies. I mean, I look back and I say that you're probably up there with 10 of the most successful contemporary endovascular proceduralists and physicians that we have nowadays. Would you agree with that?
Well, I'd say I'm a legend in my own mind.
As you should be.
We're gonna send you merch.
Yeah, legend.
That's gonna have the logo of the pod, and it says "I'm a legend," and in parentheses, in my own mind.
Yeah.
But Miguel, it's funny. Think about your own life. It's hard to get perspective on your own role in this bigger field that we're part of, right? I mean, we're all doing our part, and we all have our different motivations and drive and fires in our belly. But I've never really spent a whole lot of time thinking about how other people perceive the contributions I've tried to make. And like you, I think the things I do are just because I think they're the right things, and I hope they can be impactful. And I know that we stand on the shoulders of the people that preceded us, and I just want to create as broad a shoulder as I can for people ahead.
We just, we have a finite time on Earth, and I think we all somehow want to have a vision of changing and pushing the needle just a little bit more.
Yeah, creating. I think we're here to create as humans. Whatever that
The
is.
human is, I mean, it's creative by just nature, right?
I had that epiphany at Burning Man, actually. Yeah. I was at the top of like the tallest building on it in a camp, and then I would just, I went for the build.
So what's Burning Man for those that have never heard of that?
Burning Man is a festival in the middle of nowhere in Nevada that just gets built and destroyed within a week. And you see the most amazing art, the most amazing shows, the most amazing anything. And nothing. I was at the top of this thing that had not been at this platform. Nothing had been created a couple of days before. And at that moment, it was just full of people doing all kinds of interesting things. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. We're just here to create.
Is it very like primal? Like, is it a very kind of, like I've seen some of the videos and it feels like like a clip from Mad Max. Like people are out there in the desert.
It's the most loving, like everyone wants to give you shit. Everyone wants you like to just give you experiences. It's amazing. It's the best human expression that I've been a part of.
It sounds like someplace you can shed your skin a little bit and sort of go and be you, get rid of all those kind of expectations that we otherwise have on a day-to-day basis. And
sounds like a contemporary Woodstock. Is it a little bit Woodstocky?
I don't know. I never went to Woodstock, but I think it's more than that. I think that it's just a different experience. Like it's just a different human experience.
And I was trying to set the stage with obviously it's a disservice to your career. Nobody can ever summarize, John, what you've done in 2 minutes. But I was saying, because you and I have been talking quite a bit more lately, and back and forth with projects, with conversations, and I've really enjoyed it because I've gotten to get a lot more of the human side of you. Just a highly, incredibly dependable guy. Somebody that you would go out of your way to just sit down and have a conversation. Somebody that if I need an advice, be that because I'm pissed at my wife or because I have a problem with a financial issue at the OBL, like you're always that guy that's ready to pick up, to take some time, carve some time in your busy schedule and be ready to have a conversation. And so that has allowed me to understand a deeper level. And it seems to me, it is very uneducated, hence the reason why we're talking about it today. But it seems to me like there's a little bit of a brewing change of direction and or strategy in the winds that are under your wings lately. And maybe I'd like to know, A, if that's true, and B, maybe even go into the why before we explore more about what you would like it to look like.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually live by a series of pithy expressions, kind of corny jokes. I was actually always thinking if I was asked to give a preeminent lecture, it would be basically one corny joke after another. But little things like wherever you go, that's where you'll be. So think, think carefully. And 90% of life is showing up, and 9% is hard work, good habits, and good preparation, and 1% is luck. And you want it all to come down to luck. But I've actually given a lot of consideration in recent years. I'm 61 years old now, doing this for 33 years. Given a lot of consideration about where do I want to be, right? Because early in your career, you just want to get in and do cases, right? I mean, that's the most exciting thing, and it remains very rooting, for me as it is for you to sort of get in there, in that room, you're in control of that environment, hands-on, getting that immediate satisfaction and creating real immediate change. So you don't want to give that up. But, in the long run, we have the ability, we've been so lucky, you and I, to have created friendships and relationships and partnerships that allowed us to do a little bit more. So the question always is in life, given opportunities, how do you capitalize on those opportunities? How do you create a framework that can be more meaningful, not only for you, but for the people around you? And so I guess the answer to the first question is, yeah, it is something I've given a fair amount of thought to, uh, in as much as I have time to think. But yeah, it's definitely something that in my quiet time, I really think about kind of, what I can build, what difference I can make. And, a lot of that's kind of what's kind of how you're raised, right? What's in you as a kid, what you were sort of taught to be. Um, so I have given that, and I don't want to sort of wax, prolific here, but, the biggest sort of concept I've had is this idea of transitioning from retail to wholesale. And what I mean by that is when we take care of patients, it's a retail business. It's very transactional. And I've always said that the Starbucks equivalent would be that we stand at the counter, we order a mocha soy latte.
Mm.
And they say, that'll be $6. And we say, well, we only allow 2 if you've done the paperwork right. And you'll get that money in about 3 months. And you've taken up hours of everybody's time for this process, So, that's the Starbucks equivalent of vascular practice, And then, obviously, through the years, we've had the ability to transition into research, both participating in clinical trials and then developing research trials, serving as PIs on trials, work with companies on research development. And I equate that to drop shipping, sort of the next level. You don't really own anything, but it's a bigger contribution. The results of that research, especially if it turns out to be positive, can have a greater impact on how we provide care and how we benefit our patients, more than you could transactionally. But still, kind of that bridge between the transactional component of patient care and the wholesale model, which I'm now thinking about. And the final is the wholesale model. How do you now create businesses and create structures, either to provide services or to provide devices that now can impact a great number of people, where your time and energy now is not going to benefit just a single individual, but it's going to benefit potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions of individuals. And I've really given this a lot of thought, making this transition from this, very, very retail transactional model through to this wholesale model. And I'm trying as best as I can to do that.
One of the questions I've had, and funny enough, thought about this too a lot, right? Even though I'm a couple of years behind you, time wise, but I've already, part of me is considering, man, what is it what's next? Because I'm not sure that what I want to do is just grind these cases out and do these existential side of medicine on a daily basis, day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out. It's and to your point, because of all of those complexities at the Starbucks level. It's not because it's not fun, and it's not because it's not magical to be a doctor and to heal another human being, but because they've taken a lot of the fun out of it. And I guess I mean, it's a system in a way. And so puts me on this, it's kind of tearing, I guess. You're torn between, do you forego completely in order to be really good at this wholesale next phase? Do you have to give it 100%, 120% to be as effective and efficient? Because you probably also would like to have some time for yourself and to enjoy the wealth that you've probably accumulated through life, or do you have to somehow create a hybrid? And I'll tell you, this is my opinion. I feel that you can't half-ass it. I feel like if you've gotten to a point where you feel that you put in what you had to, it's probably in your best interest to go all in to the next phase and say, I'll forego clinicals and I'm going to focus on, the entrepreneur side and the business development side and the leadership as a physician with all of my experience, my knowledge, my networking, all of that you mentioned, that poses you strategically as 10, 20, 100, 1,000 times better than any of these Ivy League kids that come to us with a new pitch, a new deck, or a new company. I feel like as a physician can do that. And so that's my opinion, that you can't, like, once you get to that point and you make a decision, you almost have to painfully, because there's a lot of emotional baggage, close that chapter of clinical medicine and give yourself on to the next chapter. But what is your opinion in that? Do you feel that that should be a soft transition, a hybrid transition? Is there value to keeping a leg in each side of the aisle? Or are you also thinking, I'm going to go all in, maybe I'm just moving over?
Yeah, it's a great thought. I mean, first of all, with regard to the Ivy League folks, given the choice of hiring somebody who came out of, I don't know, Lakewood Community College or Harvard, I lean towards the Lakewood person because they've still got something to prove. They were never handed things on a silver spoon. So, there's definitely something for people who
100%.
are motivated. Yeah. Um, you know, my current strategy until the powers that be sort of drive me out to pasture is to sort of maintain clinical relevance. And even now, and we're going to talk about some of the other things like Protects and the companies, I find even in business conversations in product development, I very, very often kind of close my eyes and put myself back in the lab, right? Because what gets lost in translation when you're developing services or products is what that user experience is, right? Exactly, not just what the limitations might be, the unmet needs, but the haptics of it, the feel of it, the emotional response to what you're doing. And I do this all the time. I mean, and I find that if I've had any valuable input to companies through the years, it's been that ability to kind of translate my clinical experience to something that makes sense and is relevant to product development and project development. So I still think you need that clinical relevance. And I look at friends of ours, who kind of do the 1 week a month model or something like that. And maybe that's what it is.
Mm.
But I think for a long time, I still want to get into that lab. Like I said, it's very, very rooting for me. Not only that, but as you know, the pace of business is so extraordinarily different from the pace of cases, right? It's hard for guys like you and I just to sort of jump into the business world where things happen very, very slowly. There's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of voids where things are happening that you don't sort of know about, or you're waiting for, or you're not part of that conversation. And that's a very, very difficult thing, sort of from an emotional, cognitive, visceral level to get used to. So you sort of need the fix, if you will, of still getting in there and doing cases to maintain and feel whole.
Since you've thought about this quite a bit, what are the options that you thought about to do that, to decouple your inputs from your outputs? You want your inputs to create way bigger outputs, and we, in the, as you said, in the OR and the cath lab, one procedure, one patient, to do like 1 unit of work translates to 10 units of work. Besides starting your own company, is there any other mechanisms that you thought about in which we can use the very specific knowledge that we developed, that tactile feedback, that ergonomics, that feel of a device into value?
Yeah, I mean, the specifics, at least in my experience, they kind of flesh out once you create the framework. So, let's take the clinical trials network, for instance. We developed this ORCA clinical trials network, which is new. All these are new. I'm by no means a great success in any of these things yet, but trying. I'm swinging the bat, right? But that was born out of the fact that conducting clinical research for so many years in the hospital, you realize what a cumbersome, difficult process this is. People coming by and having you sign thousands of pieces of paper of which you don't no idea what they say or what they do or what they mean. So the idea that in our ambulatory surgery center, office-based laboratory, I could not provide that same sort of level of data, that I wanted to do in the hospital. So, that was just sort of a matter of taking what I was experiencing on the clinical side and what I had transitioned to developing on the research side, working with other companies, into a model now that was entirely new and unique, whereby we can bring the research to the horses rather than have the horses chase after the research, where we create the infrastructure for the research in those OBLs and ASCs. And the next step, this is more to your question, is all right, now that we're doing that, how can we transform it? And I'm sure you do this all the time too. Always sort of thinking big and thinking small at the same time. Thinking small on the one hand, do we need this bit of data and how do we enter it? Through to thinking big about how to create dashboards and access to data and big data and mega data that can sort of now guide future studies and future evolution. So it's a combination of creating new structures at the same time as you're finding solutions for the structures that exist.
So, John, for the folks out there that have never heard the word orca, would you mind explaining what orca means?
It's a big marine mammal.
You're not a veterinarian medicine, so this is not about the not
You
swimming
should have done your
orcas.
little pum button.
I could
There
do
you
it.
go. No, okay, stop it.
I just realized I have a soundboard here, and so this session I've been doing a lot of. Okay. Anyway, I'll stop that.
Yeah.
I thought you were referring to your partner over there, that he's your soundboard.
I am his therapist and vice versa.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So orca.
Yeah, well, we started with a logo of a whale, which spelled out the words orca. And once we had the logo, there was really nothing to stop us, right? I mean,
and that's your business 101. For all of you young entrepreneurs out there, it starts with the logo and everything is then downhill.
Yeah, we had the acronym, we had the logo, and so ORCA is Outpatient Research Cardiovascular Alliance, and it's continues to morph, but the idea was severalfold, sort of a couple of key concepts. One was that we wanted to be able to conduct research in our OBL and ASC, where our business partners really didn't have a whole lot of interest in investing research, right? So how could we take advantage of our clinical population and provide data and create data without kind of, putting too much of a monkey wrench in the machine that they wanted to function, they wanted to operate, without taking too much time away from the techs and the nurses and the, NPs and, the medical assistants and all those other people who are operationally important, who would immediately go back and complain to my business partners that they were being overworked and tasked to do something additional that they weren't being paid to do. So, so the idea was now to create a structure we could bring research in its entirety, a comprehensive solution that would go into the centers and yet still provide revenues to the center that would benefit and satisfy those sort of business-minded folks within the company. So that was sort of the idea. The next idea was that this was going to be a KOL network. KOL, key opinion leader, obviously. So, and, Miguel was and is part of this. We thought, okay, companies want to work with certain individuals because of the experience, but increasingly those individuals are moving to this outpatient environment. How do we kind of integrate us all, right? So the companies would have a single go-to resource where they could get, Miguel Montero Baker and his friends involved in the research that they want to do. We've actually kind of moved a little bit away from that model, realizing that you can't have all chiefs and no Indians. And we're now up to about 18 sites, and we should have 25 or so, which is our goal at the end of 2025. But, this whole idea that we have a core esprit of really enlightened, hardworking, experienced, well-known individuals that becomes a wellspring of knowledge for companies who want to use us, but more importantly, becomes a tremendously valued resource for these companies. Because otherwise, if I started with, just sort of Joe Schmo from, West Virginia, I'm sure Joe Schmo is a very good operator, but, they wouldn't necessarily be sought after. So you needed a couple of more key individuals. So that was sort of another sort of key concept. And the third key concept was, and this comes from sort of the Elon Musk world of things, is that we needed to be more streamlined. And this is still a work in development. But, I was always a Simon Sinek guy, the power of why. And ORCA gives us the ability, since we now control it, to ask why at every step. When, we have to fill out a certain form or get in certain, follow-up or structure things a certain way. Why? Why do we need to do that? Are these just sort of, things that have been handed down, generationally, and we do them because? Or can we create a much more efficient process to collect the data that's required by regulatory bodies for review and approval? So, we're sort of working through that. And what happens naturally, and we hope will become the truth behind ORCA, is that what starts as a convenient way to conduct research in the OBL and ASC environment for people who have that in their DNA is we'll morph into a data company, and we'll morph into a software company, and we'll morph into a CRO, type of company. And there are so many horizontals and verticals which naturally evolve from this fundamental idea of bringing the research to the sites, which we hope to materialize.
I'll tell you. I mean, it is brilliant, and I'll give you through my optics based on a very initial conversation I had with a private equity, one of the high level guys at the private equity firm that I knew as a friend, because a couple of years ago when I decide, okay, well, I'm gonna get off the W-2 titty, and I'm gonna decide to do this alone. And here's the funny thing is, I went to a few people that I had a lot of respect for, physicians, that I would call them like the OBL outpatient trailblazers. And I had a couple conversations. I said, listen, I'm considering opening an OBL. Categorically, every one of them said, you're crazy. Don't do it.
That's the crazy part, because there's so many opportunities that come up, but everybody says don't do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I'll take back that it was like category A. Everybody had like a little bit, there was this good and the bad and this, but like, I don't think it makes sense. I think the golden years are over. I think you shouldn't consider. Okay. Let me give you the counter argument. I sit down with this PE guy and I ask him, dude, all these doctors are telling me that that's a dumb move. Yet you guys are rolling up left and right. So why is it that you guys are rolling these companies up?
By rolling, you mean buying?
So yes, but yes. A private equity, what they do is they do roll ups. So they bring an amount of them, they create efficiencies, they centralize systems, create margin, and then sell. That's it. And so there's they never pick up a business that's losing. They pick a business that's winning to make it win a little bit more, and then essentially kind of hand it off, maybe to a hospital system, maybe to a United Healthcare, maybe to whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, I would expect them to say that because doctors are really bad at business in general. And he said the margins are there. It's the fact of the matter is, there's multi-billion-dollar businesses out there where the margins are 3 to 5%. And so he said, you guys have way bigger margins. That the margins are actually huge. Why do you think every PE firm is devouring this business? He said the problem is that you guys are terribly inefficient because you just, you're very hyper focused on clinicals and you're all this. And then you think that you need to invest all this money to operate, but you can do a lot of offshoring, and then you can do centralization, and then you can do a lot of things. That's where we bring that efficiencies, right? We know how to do this. And then we have the power of volume. And when we have the power of volume, you negotiate better deals and better contracts. And, your billing company charges less because there's more volume. Anyway, all to say, it absolutely makes sense. And all you have to understand is that because you're coming late in the game, and maybe the golden years are done. It doesn't mean the golden years of doing poor business are done, but there's a very bright future of very strategic ways of doing business. Okay, that's a long story. Why did I say that? Because if you think of all the people out there now that are considering this or that are already in this and understand that the margins are dwindling away, they need to create efficiencies. And guess what? Efficiency does not come from enrolling a patient in a study once a month and having all these people sitting around doing nothing. So you want to be clinically relevant. You want to be part of research. You want to feel you're at the cutting edge, but you don't want to take all the fat because you can't do it. Back in the days, you could. Back in the days, you could have 10 people in the research unit that didn't do crap, maybe enrolled 1 or 2 here or there, but you can't do that now. But you look at it from a company. If I'm a company and I'm looking to get a study off the ground real quick, I'm going to have less red tape. I'm going to have 20 sites activated with 1 administrative process, and I'm going to get my recruitment times 20. Yeah, I'm going to get a couple of KOLs in the middle on top of that. So I'm going to have a little bit of podium presence too. And it's a win-win. So to John's point, yeah, I mean, there's going to be some processes that have to happen. The company has to evolve. The company has to become more sophisticated. But I think the value proposition is brilliant because it offers the OBL guys the possibility to be part of the newest and greatest technology, beating the hospitals. Like, I'll have drug-coated balloons that the hospitals don't even dream of having. I have them. I've got bioabsorbable scaffolds that the hospital doesn't have. I have stentless, deep venous arterialization procedures that the hospital doesn't have. Nobody has access to that, but I do, because ORCA offers this path into it. And guess what? It's not a huge line item on my balance sheet. So, John, I think it's just the wins are there. The time is right. A lot of times timing is of essence. You said 1% luck. I think that I think it's the right strategy, and I love the project. I've been there since day one. I thought it was great, and I think it's just a matter of doing the work to continue building it up.
Yeah, well, I hope from your mouth to whatever higher powers' ears. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, for the people in the lab, they get access to all the toys and tools that they want. I once went to a men's group, and they talked about priorities, and for a lot of people, more women. I don't want to just get gender specific here, but in this men's group was women care about family and love and relationships, and men, and this is probably true of whether you're male or female interventionalists, care about toys, tools, and tinkering. So so this gives the interventionalists that access to the toys, the tools, and the tinkering that we just love so much, without having to create a huge infrastructure. And for the companies, like you said, it's a single contract. They contract 1 contract with ORCA. They don't have to do multiple, conversations with lawyers. They don't have to do multiple distributions of devices, even necessarily. They don't have to go to WERB or WCG multiple times. We have these pre-existing contracts in place. So it's 1 point of contact, 1 portal of entry, and then we give them as many sites as they want. So that's certainly the idea. And, with people like you behind this, I think you create the wind in the sails. I don't think that the wind, it's more us huffing and puffing into the sails than hoping for the winds to blow. But I appreciate everything you've done, and I do think that this could be a really an important transitional model in this sort of outpatient device research world that we live in.
I'll be very, very transparent to you here. I love to hear that you're in this phase that you want to relocate your time, because I do feel like with any good project, you need a motor. And I think that you can drive ORCA, not alone. And I'm not saying that I'm not with you, but I think that you just need somebody that's there, right? And so I'm just very excited about this one. And I know, John, when we look at our statistics, half of the people that join are industry folks. And so for all you there sitting about and thinking about potentially putting a trial together, reach out to Dr. Rundback and the ORCA team and allow us that are doing the cases on a daily basis access to your device. Let us help you get it through, because I think that this is just going to be a much easier and gratifying experience to get technology out there.
I'm Jan Skowronski.
I'm Miguel Montero Baker.
And I'm Bob Beasley.
Please join us for Pegasus Endovascular, the whole day of online endovascular entertainment.
Last year was just a hoot. We really enjoyed the back and forth, the live interviews, and I especially enjoyed not agreeing with all of you guys.
I have no intentions of agreeing with a radiologist or a vascular surgeon. I'm a cardiologist.
I love the case-based approach, man. And I hope all of you all over the world just join us. Go to pegasusendovascular.com. Remember, it's going to be March 1st. That is a Saturday, and it's free of cost. You're going to get the best guys all over the world talking, discussing, and potentially not agreeing a lot. So join us.
See you March 1st.
Let's kind of go. I know that actually ORCA has a lot of projects, but one of those projects that I'm very excited about that we can use here the last third of our hour with you to talk about is something that you've been working pretty hard at, and it's a company called Protects. And I'd love, if you don't mind, that we spend a few minutes just talking about what it is, what was the concept behind it, and I guess what excites you about this. But let's start with what's Protecta and how did you guys come up with this technology?
Yeah, love it. I'm head over heels. I don't get that many fora in which I can talk about these projects. So sort of, thank you for this opportunity. My wife is tired of hearing me talk about them day in and day out. So it's nice to get a different audience.
I told Jenna the other day, I was like, oh, baby, you should listen to our podcast. It's so the last one we had, it was so good. You should listen. You'd love it. And she's like, dude, I listen to you every day. I will absolutely never hear your podcast. I was like, that's mean. That's mean. But it resonates, John. It resonates.
Yeah, but what Jenna doesn't realize, because she knows you one way, is how important you are and the contributions you made in this science and in the world of vascular world. So she knows you in a different realm, and I'm sure that's a different experience and a different you. But she should listen.
There you go. We'll send the clip
I'll turn it on at night and then get into her subconscious.
Yeah.
She should see you this way. I mean, my wife Lily listens to my business conversations and afterwards tells me all the other things I should have said and should have done. So,
but that she does.
Yeah.
She eavesdrops like a mofo, and then at the end of the conversation, she's like, "I don't like this plan about blah blah blah." I was like, listen.
Either you listen to everything or you listen to nothing.
I will say that half of the time I'll be like, listen, stop eavesdropping. And then I'm like walking out of the house. I'm like, man, she's right. I'm going to call him back and say we shouldn't do that. But anyway, Protecta.
Yeah, so Protecta is a device that's proximal embolic protection for lower extremity arterial interventions, starting with the beachhead of below the knee interventions, which you've been part of. You actually did our first in human cases, so obviously familiar with this. And I think that as we've sort of evolved and developed tools to treat peripheral arterial disease, we've really found a lot of solutions for the limitations and problems that might arise. Certainly over the years, we developed, and continue to develop, vessel preparation, tools and plaque modification tools to allow better luminal gain and better acute results. We developed, tools to treat thrombus when it occurs. We developed tools to identify, underlying disease more accurately, so we can use the right and appropriate devices. We developed tools to treat dissections, one way or another. Now we develop bioabsorbable stents and other, things which can have long-term benefit. But one thing that's sort of been overlooked is this whole idea of embolization. And it's sort of funny. I mean, obviously, the foot is a far more forgiving vascular bed than the heart or the brain. And maybe that's why we've sort of taken the, inherent embolization that occurs during these procedures on the chin, if you will. We've sort of taken it as part of the cost of doing business. I mean, nobody would do a carotid intervention if they're not doing it open, or an endovascular carotid intervention without some sort of protection, right? I mean, whether it be proximal protection or distal protection. And increasingly, as you know, with the TCAR experience, which has been revolutionary, carotid revascularization is done with proximal embolic protection, flow reversal. You don't see that in the legs.
John, even TAVRs, now they have these big nets that float over the aortic arch, because it's inevitable, right? I mean, you're not magically removing plaque. It's going somewhere.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, and what always struck me is when I sort of started looking into this embolization problem, was this number of unplanned amputations. Now, often they're minor amputations. That sort of, had me scratching my head. What's an unplanned amputation? You have a patient, they have a wound, or,
Called a fuck up.
or whatever they might have had, right?
That's called a fuck up, yeah.
And now you revascularize them, right? Now you got to take, the forefoot, or a few extra toes, or something. But I mean, what is that? And that's fundamentally embolization. And that's actually about 10% of cases. When you look at the numbers. And when you do various other things, like spyglass and other tools, and really critically look at embolization, it's happening all the time. We worked with Jill Somerset, who looks at hits, like the use for transcranial Doppler. It happens all the time. Every single procedure, we're generating downstream emboli. And we're just sort of hoping, that the stars will align and this won't have any immediate long-term damage. But particularly in patients with chronic limb-threatening ischemia, these patients get multiple and repetitive procedures over the course of their lifetime, each of which results in embolization with incremental damage and probably eventual limb loss. I actually think that the problems that have been cited around atherectomy and potentially worse outcomes, although you can argue both ways, right? There's data both ways, but that's probably embolization. I think that atherectomy is a tool to prepare the vessel for a definitive therapy, and maximal luminal gain is a fabulous device if you could eliminate the embolization. So nothing really existed. I mean, for fem-pop interventions, sure, you could put a downstream net. That sort of made sense. Obviously, it only catch things 100 microns or larger, and a lot of what we embolize, as we now know from our pathologic data, is much smaller than that and probably passes through the net. But when you get down below the knee, you would need potentially 3 nets. And, they wouldn't be sized appropriately in these very small and tapered vessels. So the idea of proximal embolic protection, which is so broadly accepted elsewhere, seemed to sort of make sense. So around that, we kind of, repurposed the prior device, which was a one component of a several component thrombectomy device, redesigned it and created a proximal embolic device for low extremity arterial interventions. And that's what Protects is. And it's really cool because the way this is designed, and the credit here goes out to Dick Fulton, who has the IP on this, and he's obviously principal in the company, is this thing expands with relatively low outward radial force. And the patient's own blood pressure then fills this silicone-covered net and pushes it against the wall like a gasket, so that you get complete sealing at low pressure against the vessel wall without any local injury. And what's really interesting is, not only can you have a working lumen through which you aspirate while you perform your atherectomy, angioplasty, drug-coated balloon, potential, particulate debris from the drug-coated balloon, but it creates an immediate pressure differential so that, and you've seen some of this work, and we did some recently with some of the Jetstream device, the moment you inflate this thing, you get flow reversal. You don't even have to be aspirating. Whatever collaterals there are that are perfusing downstream now flow retrograde up into the Protexus device. When we did some work with the Jetstream, it increased the efficiency of the Jetstream downstream. The Jetstream was not capturing all device. You turn this thing on, now the Jetstream in combination with the Protexus device captured all embolic debris, 100% effective, just by creating this pressure differential.
Well, plus don't forget that the tibial Jetstream doesn't have the aspiration port.
Yeah. That's
so
really,
the small Jetstream doesn't. So but let me add just a couple of things, because I had this thing on my hands.
Yeah.
Really cool. So one of the things that I do a lot.
What French size?
6
John,
French for the
6.
antegrade device.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
one of the things that at least Lucas, John, I don't know if you knew, but Lucas had done his fellowship. Lucas is a little younger than us, and he had done his fellowship with me. So I feel like I taught him a couple of things here or there. But that when I'm doing complex tibial interventions, I like to put a long sheath. So I'll do an antegrade stick, and I'll put like a 545 or a 645, whatever I have to do. I park at the popliteal, and then I have like all this support to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So with this, it's kind of like the same, but a little more. What do I mean? You put a sheath antegrade, and then you put this kind of guiding catheter through the sheath. And then once you get into that P2 segment, P3 segment, then you deploy the basket. Then that does 2 things. One is it starts creating distal protection immediately.
Yeah.
And 2, is you now have this very robust platform that allows for pushability. So if you're doing like a complex CTO or whatever, you almost have like more oomph.
Yeah.
And so then the idea is, you don't necessarily even deploy the basket immediately. You deploy it maybe when you have the wire already done. Maybe you can deploy up and down as needed. And then when you're ready to actually do your, rotational atherectomy, extractional atherectomy, whatever you're doing, and you pop that guy up and then you go.
Yeah.
And then you suction like you would be. I don't know if you ever did the MoMA device, the
No,
proximal
yeah.
carotid. It was the same. So you'd put this balloon up. This isn't a balloon, but you'd put this proximal thing up. Then you do the procedure. And then you would suction, 20, 40, 60 mLs. And sometimes you actually had macro debris, but that's not what's super cool. It's that the amount of micro debris that we pulled through the syringes is crazy. And then this is just a side comment, but another kind of cool thing was that the contrast column would like kind of stay there while I was working.
Oh, so you can see everything.
So you had like a little map. And then at the end, like when I was suctioning, I sucked all the contrast out.
Yeah.
So you could even do like nephroprotection, right?
Yeah.
So there's this kind of side. Yeah, it isn't necessarily that's the intention, but I was like, I think this is pretty interesting because you're also protecting the amount of you could do probably a third of the contrast because you maybe need one shot, do the whole thing, and then just suck it out. And then So anyway, that was just my little personal experience with a small amount of patients that we did through our research company in Latin America.
That's really brilliant. I mean,
what's your first, before he talks more about this, but as a operator,
my
what's your
first
thought?
is now I can use some devices that I would not use because I think they embolize a ton.
Yeah.
I was going to say a shit ton.
But that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of what we have, we're incredibly cautious, every presentation, it's true, right? We've gotten this dogma. It's like, when would you not use single vessel outflow?
Yeah. Why?
Why, bro?
Why? Because it
embolizes
all the time.
So now thinking that there's something that you could do to avoid or minimize that, I think it's so simple. That's what I love about it. It's like, when we're trying to get lymph flow approved, that was complicated.
Yeah.
But this is so intuitive.
Yeah.
It's so easy. It's so simple, and it just makes sense for anybody in an elevator pitch.
Yeah.
That you would think, why not?
The only thing I could imagine you have to be careful about is that you're gonna make the structure maybe more ischemic during this time, so you have to be quick.
And that's why I said you put it up when you're actually doing the stuff, right?
Yeah,
like you can keep it down.
Yeah, exactly.
You can cross, you can do the whole thing. And then maybe when you do the high embolic stuff, you could put it up, you could suck, and then you could do maybe balloon off of it. Like, you don't need to make it a 2-hour because it could be probably uncomfortable for the patient.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to you, John. I don't want to interrupt. What did you guys find? Tell us a little bit about what you found on the blood work of those specimens.
Absolutely. First of all, to your point, the next generation, which we're already working on, is the device will be the sheath. So
so it's going to be integrated.
It'll go in like a sheath.
Yeah,
it's going to be integrated. So you won't have to put a sheath first. So just like to your point, you can deploy it and collapse it. The contrast sparing is huge. A third of our patients have chronic kidney disease, and as you know, CO2 below the knee is not really very useful, especially when people are sort of moving around.
Yeah.
Right,
and it's uncomfortable.
And the living roadmap,
don't like it.
Yeah, no. That living roadmap, which Peter Schneider refers to, that contrast static column when the thing's up, allows even patients who are kind of jumping around to be intervened on. You can still sort of see what you're doing and what you're crossing. So there are all these sort of ancillary benefits for sure. The contrast sparing may be super relevant. But so what we've seen so far now, both in bench models and our cadaver models, is every single time we're capturing debris. And we're capturing debris as small as 40 microns. And it's plaque, it's organized thrombus. Actually, one of my best reads, I have to get you the reference from this year, was an article which came out of Europe looking about the thrombus burden in chronic tibial occlusive disease and femoral popliteal. But, it's amazing how much thrombus there is in chronic disease. And even the FemPop, like we've started doing thrombectomy on SFA CTOs prior to doing something. And you go back with a thrombectomy device, now you have a lumen and you have flow. It's like most of the time, it's unbelievable. So, we kind of think that this is all organized material, but no matter how long it's been there, there's a lot of fresh thrombus. So, and we're capturing that routinely in every single case. Also, the early work is that we don't see those hits, those bright signals that you see downstream with this thing deployed, they just go away. I mean, you'll see obviously the motion of the devices, but downstream you don't see this sort of particles that are flashing by before your eyes, your life flashing before your eyes, if you will.
Are there a lot of those hits with just angioplasty?
Unbelievably,
Really?
a lot of them. I mean, at every step.
Have you seen it, Lucas? Have you seen any of these videos?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you have to.
Can you send us some, John? We'll put it on the pod.
Yeah, a good friend has been on the pod too, Jill. So she, cranks up the Doppler signal, puts it on the foot, and then she expands those waveforms, even in a class 4 pedal acceleration time. That's almost like a lake, right?
Yeah.
And then when you start working, it's like, and then you start.
Oh, really?
Dude, it is scary AF to the point that you're like, no, take that thing off. Like, I don't want to know what's happening anymore, right? Which is what we've been doing this whole time. Is we were like, just, I don't want to know. Don't tell me about it. Let's just hope it looks good. It's unbelievable, the amount of stuff. Now, of course, with atherectomy, off the charts.
Yeah.
But even with
John,
wire crossing.
Can I invest in this, John? Can I give you some money?
Lucas,
you're too late, okay? You're too late to the table.
You have to talk to Miguel, take some of his. We just give to Miguel because we get his intellectual input on things.
Because he's cute, okay?
Yeah, because you're
sometimes
cute.
Looks help.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit of what's the plan here. I mean, I think conceptually it makes sense. The first in human research is solid. What's the next step with Protecta?
Yeah, so this is actually 510K approved from its prior iteration. So we're doing a post-market study starting in February, which will be a small number of patients, and that's going to be on label with aspiration of thrombotic and other debris, utilizing both hits. So Jill, or her surrogate, whoever she trains will be there actually measuring hits. We're going to get pathologic measurements in every single one. We developed a calorimetric assay to look at contrast sparing. So we're going to look at all of those things as well. And presuming that goes well, that's going to be both an 8 French contralateral and a 6 French ipsilateral device until we downsize it with an integrated sheath. And the next step is, assuming that goes well, is then we're going to go for our label expansion, for actual expansion and labeling as a proximal embolic protection device. So that'll require another 105 patients. So we'll probably start that ID up either end of next year or early 2026. But look, we all do a lot of lower extremity work. This is, as far as inclusion, exclusion, it's really kind of all comers. So enrolling this should not be as great a challenge. We're going to run it through ORCA as well as some other hospital-based sites. So I think that the stars are aligning. We're sort of starting to see now a lot of kind of good ideas sort of, coalesce and reinforce one another. And my goal is, when I grow old, I want to have my own podcast. So that's my goal.
You
can come be a co-host.
I was just going to say, man, anytime you are bored and you want to come
to Texas.
It's always good to have another bestie on the podcast.
Yeah.
So you're always invited.
You're going to get sued for like copyright. You can't call people
It's
besties.
not copyrighted. It's a word bestie.
I'm sure it's copyrighted.
It's not.
Well, I would say hine. I am here for you. That's the Iron Man. So.
That's awesome. Well, John, listen, we're getting close to the top or the bottom, I guess, of the show. And I wanted to say thank you very, very much for spending a little time of your Saturday with us. What a journey. I expect nothing but ongoing greatness. It's a pleasure to be your friend. It's a pleasure to be your colleague. You're incredibly inspirational. And, we'll keep the lines open. And this is your home. Life of Flow will forever be a place where you can bring any of your new projects also in the future, bring them over. Even your dogs. Dogs can also be invited to the podcast.
Yeah.
We can do a dog cast one day.
I'm embracing my concept of elephant leadership. I want to lead from the back of the pack. We need people like you out in front, and at the end of the day, the back of the pack, you make the most critical decisions about the direction of the herd. And that's where I want to be. It's never about us individually. In the end of the day, it's nice to sort of have your name out there, but it's more important to sort of be sitting around one day and have somebody talk about something you were involved in developing and not even know that you were involved. There's sort of a sense of quiet reward there. And I think that's my goal. So I can't thank you enough for all you're doing and have done. And you are one of my very valued friends. So I appreciate this opportunity.
Love it, guy.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much. Y'all have a beautiful Saturday. Bye-bye.
Bye.